I thought that for today, for the last month of the year, I would address how to focus on vision. I feel like 2020, when we started out, lots of references were made to 2020 being the year of vision, and I think lots of people were excited about that. And I think that the year turned out to be very different than people expected. And so I think for 2021, a lot of people feel that it's up in the air. A lot of things are up in the air. People don't know when job situations are going to go back to normal. People don't know, how things are going to be financially or socially. And so I think that this is a topic that is relevant right now. And my first part for how to focus on vision for 2021 is revisiting our vision for 2020. When 2020 started, whatever personal vision we had, whatever goals we had, I think it is important to revisit that and reconnect to why we wanted that and see if anything has changed based on the year that we've had. So is there anything that you'd like to subtract? Is there anything you'd like to add? And at this point in time, how does that vision line up with your values, with our values now? So I think for a lot of people, from what I hear on the news, a lot of family situations have changed. There's been a lot of divorce happening, and people have been grappling with health stuff, not just because of the pandemic, but also because of anxiety, depression, addiction, and things like that, which have increased because of the different kind of precarious life situations that we've experienced this year. And I think for a lot of people, money has also been a worry and a challenge. So in these major areas that would have been highly impacted, as well as lifestyle, but these particular areas where it really affects our quality of life, I think that it's important that we sit with it and we ask ourselves deeper questions and reconnect to how we can go forward where we are connecting to our values and we're connecting to a higher purpose so that we're able to move through a challenging time. So revisiting the vision, that's the start. The second thing is to recognize that for 2021, we can use the time, even though people are not sure when things are going to change or when things are going to go back to normal, we can use the time to lay groundwork. So 2020, we could have been using 2020 to lay groundwork, but I think that for a lot of people, this situation might have caught them off guard, and it ended up creating some chaos and confusion, as opposed to us being prepared to take this year to do groundwork for future times. So I think it's important that for 2021 that we take that approach and say, okay, so 2020 was us rearranging things, shifting, the energy's shifting, things are shifting socially, things are shifting when it comes to industries and careers and families. And so 2021 is about actually laying the groundwork little bit by little bit in a variety of areas that we can invest in over time. And when we approach it that way, the precariousness of the situations in whatever cities people are in. I'm in Toronto, we're on our second lockdown period right now. There's more things open than there was the first time, but because a lot of businesses adjusted to the new rules, but I think a lot of people are still struggling with going out and about. So Yeah, so for 2021, where we're not quite sure about dates, we're not quite sure about, life situations, if we can focus on laying the groundwork and planning, it's really, really important that we focus on planning for vision. Because sometimes when we have a goal and it's the new year, we want to jump in right away. You see people like joining the gym in January and like things like that, where people just have a goal and they want to jump in. But I think this time is teaching us that planning is important and doing the mental work is really important right now. So the next stage of refocusing on vision is recognizing that our challenges are the opportunity to build muscle on the inside. And everything that happens as an individual in our lives, the challenges that we have personally, and then this is a global challenge. It's a challenge for countries, it's a challenge for industries, and it is the opportunity to build muscle. It's not an ideal opportunity, Sometimes an ideal opportunity to build muscle is something we choose, right? Like if I choose to go to the gym and get a personal trainer and build physical muscle, even though it's a struggle, it feels like, well, it's my choice. I have power in the situation. And so I'm glad to do that. But when things that are more happening around us and more happening, like if something happens in a family, if something happens in a country, and then with this, something's happening in the world, it can feel like, how do I build muscle in something that wasn't my choice? Well, it's still a choice to build the muscle, to focus on that, to aim for that. And right now I'm reading Man's Search for Meaning, and that's what the book is about. It's about logotherapy and how Viktor Frankl focused on, even in the worst situations and the worst circumstances, how he focused on moving through the experiences of living in a concentration camp. So it's like not his choice, the worst situation, the worst experiences, and still there is a choice about how we're going to respond, how we're going to react, and what we're going to focus on for the future. So that's it. It's important that we take that perspective for ourselves during this time in order to stay focused on the vision. And even if people are struggling financially, even in family, even with health, we have to focus on where the opportunities are. So there's problems for sure, and if we can assess that each situation, each person's life is going to be different, the situation is going to be different, but if we can assess where the opportunities are in each area and make sure that we're focused on that, what the opportunity is, where it is, how we can respond to it in the best way possible, then that's what's going to help us build the muscle consistently instead of wavering and getting into some kind of rut. So the next layer to this is recognizing that every challenge is the opportunity for a part of our ego to melt. So when we're young, we start building up our ego, and most people when they're in their teens and 20s are, very narcissistic, very idealistic and self-centered and all of that. And each challenge that we have throughout life, like all the way, even if we live till 120, is an opportunity for a part of our ego to melt. It is the opportunity to transcend something, a certain area, a certain subject, a certain kind of pattern. And if we allow that process to happen, a new world opens up to us. It might take time. So when we first lose a part of our ego, when we allow it to melt, that part of us can feel a little bit like, it might feel a little empty, it might feel a little lonely, it might feel a little confusing. there might be anxiety, there might be tiredness, but that's okay. And then if we can fully surrender to the experience and embrace the experience, then a new world can open. And I feel like because this is a global challenge, what we're going through now, the world is going to be different. Things are going to feel different. So even like when this has passed, people are going to have a different way of approaching and feeling, and they're going to have a different experience of life. And so that, like, allowing that new world to emerge is what will help deepen our connection to our soul. It'll help deepen our connection to our values, and it will help us stay focused on living like a very meaningful life, like continuing to live a meaningful life. If we don't allow that process to happen, so when we bump up against a challenge, even as an individual, and we don't want that part of our ego to melt, we hold on to it, we struggle against the universe, and we say, like, no, I want this part of my identity to stay, I don't want to change, I don't want this to change. And we end up becoming, parts of us, we end up becoming more narcissistic, more contracted, and then still in that area, like, we end up feeling more fear, even though we might not actually feel it, because we have like all of this, all this like whirlwind of stuff around it to hide it. But that will create more narcissism and contraction inside of us. And so this, it's important that in order to move forward with our vision, focus on like those like kind of sadder feelings and the anxiety and the depression and things like that, that's okay to feel during this time. It's okay for the shift to happen, the transition to happen, because we want to walk towards that new world opening, as opposed to pushing the change away and just panicking and then turning to something toxic and destructive. So all of those other feelings, like, even though it might be hard just to pull back from addiction or pull back from a deep depression, it's still a better path to let that part of our ego go than to fight the universe and try to be more powerful than God, because that's not possible. So yeah, just like it's important to connect to the soul during this experience and stay with it, even if it feels uncomfortable. The soul is very wise, it's very old, and it will lead you through. God will lead you through. There will be light. There will be light that will just move us little by little into a new phase, into a new stage and time. So the last part of this, focusing on vision, is something that I wanted to just address. We've had so many times in the past where people are like, I don't have time for this, I don't have time for that. I can't count how many times I've run a workshop on self-care and people tell me I don't have time for self-care, my kids this and my job that, and like, how do I incorporate self-care into this like area, and it's just such a struggle. It's such a struggle for so many people to have time to, for example, read all the books that they've always wanted to read, watch all the movies that they've always wanted to watch. Like, there's so many things that we want to do that require time and also requires solitude. And now in this year that people have had some time and had some solitude, and by the way, not that much time, less than a year is not that much time. There's lots of monks that go live in a monastery, they leave their friends and family, they're not watching TV every day, and they're not on social media every day. So, and some people go live in a mountain, and some people go live in a forest, and they're by themselves for 5 years, they're in silence, they're this and that. So we've had less than a year, and people are already complaining about, like, like they don't know what to do with themselves, and all their goals, like all those, like, I want to get more fit, I want to practice more self-care, I want to read all these books. all of a sudden those things aren't good enough, right? It's like when they're busy, when people are busy, they're too busy for those things that they really want to do. And then now that we have a bit of time to do those things, it's still like a dissatisfaction, because that's what people are actually addicted to. That's what we're actually addicted to, is the dissatisfaction. So it's important to remember that this year was about getting to know ourselves and like realizing these things about ourselves, that, like getting to know like why, if we have time on our own, if we have solitude, and solitude is what is necessary to read books and to meditate and to pray and to like do all of these deepening things, to get better at fitness, to get better at nutrition. Solitude is part of that journey. So if we've had a bit more solitude over the last year and we haven't been happy about it, we should ask ourselves, why am I so dissatisfied with myself, right? Because at the end of the day, we want to be good company to ourselves. Like, we want to feel like I'm good company. I like my company. That's where we want to get to.